New reaction from the official who appears to be the first target of the first criminal investigation by President Trump into his political adversaries. New York Attorney General Letitia James telling MSNBC that the federal probe into allegation of housing fraud is, quote, baseless and discredited. In February last year, Trump was ordered to pay more than $450 million in penalties from a lawsuit brought by James's office that accused him of inflating his net worth to secure financial benefits.
This is nothing more than an extension of his revenge, his retribution, and he finally got up to the J's. And so I stand prepared to respond to these baseless attacks with facts. And we look forward, obviously, to further discussions with the Department of Justice. I have been someone who has been targeted, but I am not fearful. I am fearless. And I will continue to walk into the office of the New York State Attorney General and, again, protect the residents and protect them from any harms coming from the federal government.
Back again, we've got Michael Hardaway and Brendan Buck. Michael, you heard those fighting words there from James, but in announcing this investigation into whether or not she falsified paperwork for property she owns in Virginia and New York, the U.S. attorney said James, quote, unethically ran around the state campaigning on getting Donald Trump. The merits of what James is being accused of aside for the moment, what is your takeaway when prosecutors are explicitly saying there is a political component to the investigation into her?
Well, it's shocking. She's being attacked and persecuted for doing her job, which is prosecuting someone who committed a crime like Donald Trump did. I mean, this doesn't happen in a real democracy. The idea that Donald Trump has weaponized the entire federal government against all of his enemies and opponents, from the law firms that represented his political opponents to the federal officials that have prosecuted him for his spreadsheet of crimes that he's committed. I mean, this is shocking, and we're only 5 months in. My real question is, where does this go? I mean, we've got 3.5 years of this guy who seems to have no regard for the Constitution or the rule of law. How far does this go?
But Brendan, Trump campaigned on the promise of that retribution against his perceived enemies. So should anyone be surprised? And what is your take on this investigation?
I mean, he did, but he also said that he wasn't going to use DOJ in the way that he says it was used against him. And obviously we can't take that very seriously. He's already put out executive memorandums, EOs by the president, saying going after people like Miles Taylor and Chris Krebs. He's very out in the open going after people he perceived to be going after him previously. Certainly this feels like retribution. It feels pretty small, sort of ticky-tacky stuff that they're going after her on. But also feels a bit like intimidation to people who may be interested in coming after him in the future. We know that he's gone after law firms, trying to discourage any law firms from taking any cases that may hurt him. So they're covering all their bases just to make sure that nobody's holding Donald Trump accountable in any way that they can.
And look, that intimidation has been surprisingly effective in some venues. Brendan, I also want to ask you, you've got a new New York Times op-ed, and in it you warn that Trump's, quote, one big, beautiful bill, the details of which Republicans are scrambling to work out, could actually be a trap for the GOP if they're trying to offset the damage of President Trump's tariffs. So the heart of this bill is extending this 2017 law that reduces personal income tax. Can you tell us why you think it could be foolish for Republicans to believe that this package is going to blunt the economic impact of those tariffs?
Yeah, well, I'll start by saying I'm biased. I helped pass the 2017 tax law when I was working for Paul Ryan. I think it was a good law, and I think Congress should extend it. What I'm concerned about for Republicans is that they should not expect any voters to give them a big thank you for doing so. This is just keeping tax rates where they currently are. Look, we actually cut people's taxes in 2017 and in 2018, and nobody noticed, and we lost the House that year. I don't think they're going to get people are going to see a lot of bump in their pay or take-home pay as a result of this. But then when you add in the fact that the president is adding these tariffs, adding to the cost of living, it's going to squander any economic benefit from this tax law. And I think the trap here is Republican leaders know this. They know that tariffs are bad news, but they cannot bring themselves to criticize him or try to do anything about that because they need Donald Trump to help pass that tax bill, because there's going to be a lot of people who aren't going to want to vote for it, and they're going to need his political muscle to do it. So as long as they're looking the other way while tariffs keep raining down, The economic situation is going to be worse, and they aren't going to really get any relief for passing this tax bill again, because it's just keeping people's taxes where they already are.
But Michael, on that note, when it comes to this budget bill, you've now got Speaker Johnson. He appears to be backing off some of the most aggressive cuts to Medicare. But, you know, Republican lawmakers in competitive districts are pushing back against slashing Medicaid, you know, that third rail of politics, over fear that it's going to cost them votes. Could Democrats use this, potentially getting Republicans on the record saying they're willing to cut these entitlement programs to help them potentially overtake the House next year?
Yeah, they can and they should. Look, Republicans, for whatever reason, seem to be committed to committing political suicide. Medicaid is one of the most popular things in America. It's far more popular than even ice cream. You've got 97% of Americans who say that Medicaid is critical to people in their community. Only 90% of Americans like ice cream. And so I say all of that to say, if Democrats are smart, which they are, which Leader Jeffries is leading this effort to drive awareness around the country around the idea that you can't touch Medicaid, that people need Medicaid in a political climate and an economic climate where everything is already unaffordable. And that's without the $4,000 in additional taxes people will pay because of Trump's tariffs. And so if Republicans hope to avoid a blue wave in next year's midterms, they have to figure out some way to back away from this.
Brendan, Americans' opinion of ice cream aside, you know, to complicate matters further, it's not really clear what exactly President Trump wants in this bill. We've got this social media post where Trump said Republicans should probably not boost taxes on the nation's wealthiest people. But in the same post, he also said, but I'm okay if they do. This was after he reached out to Speaker Mike Johnson about adding a tax hike on the highest earners, something GOP lawmakers told me as early as this week that that's a non-starter with them. What do you make of these deliberations?
Well, I think Donald Trump understands the politics of this bill. Admittedly, in 2017, 2018, we got beat up for, I think, unfairly calling the tax law the tax cuts for the rich, and he wants to take that criticism away. The problem is that we have 40 years of Republican orthodoxy, which is you never raise taxes. And so we got some pretty fierce pushback from members of the Republican conference in Congress. So I don't think it's going to happen. But in some ways, it is an admission that this is probably too rich for the upper income. And I'm sure Democrats are going to make plenty of hay with that. This is a situation where this is the biggest thing that Donald Trump has legislatively, and he's basically been ignoring it his first 100 days. And so just now he seems to have woken up into some of the details, and he's meddling in it and making things harder. It's not surprising. That's what he did before. But I'm sure Republican leaders don't appreciate him piping in with random ideas that they have no interest in including.
And Michael, quickly before I let you go, if Republicans do manage to levy a tax on high-income earners, does that help or hurt Democrats?
Well, I don't think they will, but it helps Democrats in the context of Republicans have come in and done nothing they promised to do in terms of driving down prices, in terms of making America more affordable. It would just be another failure of them to do anything surrounding any of those things. But I don't think that they're going to raise taxes on their donors who support them and who drive their agenda.
All right, Michael Hardaway, Brendan Buck, thank you both.